Welcome everybody. My name's Jed Matz. I'm the CEO of the CRCNA, which is short for the CRC for Developing Northern Australia. I just wanted to start by acknowledging the traditional owners on the land on which we're all meeting today, so multiple groups, and the elders past, present and future. Before we get going, I just wanted to start with a bit of housekeeping. The EOI, the webinar today is being recorded, so just wanted people to be aware of that. If you could keep your microphones on mute if you've got that option, please do so. We've got a Q&A function as part of Zoom. I'm sure you're all used to using those by now. So please feel free to lodge your questions. We'll try and get to them at the end of the session, and if we don't, we will answer them after the session and circulate that to the group on here today, as well as putting that on our website for anyone to see as part of our EOI process. If you've got any technical issues, please use the chat function. Carla's online, our communications manager, and she'll manage any of those communications issues. So without further ado, we might get going. Just an overview of what we're doing today. Just going to quickly talk about the CRC, our area of operation, and the key dates for the EOI submission, our priorities for this funding call, the process under which you can apply, and then hopefully have some time for questions at the end if I can get through it quickly. Covered the housekeeping, so straight on to area of operation. We are a CRC for Developing Northern Australia, so as you can imagine, we are focused on research that is delivering impact in the area in green on the map you can see there. So we will work with researchers based either in the south of Australia or internationally, and we work with other partners in those regions as well. However, the impact of the research needs to be felt predominantly in the region under which we're chartered to be addressing. Our board is made up of people that live and work and have done most of their lives in Northern Australia. Their backgrounds are largely in line with our research priorities: agriculture, health and traditional owner-led business, and some of them also have good backgrounds on boards in Northern Australia, and are all really passionate about the development of Northern Australia. In addition to our board members, the CRC maintains alliances with a number of partners, in addition to the Commonwealth and state government partners we have, which include CRDC, FIAL, CRDC, and a number of CRCs, which you can see there on the screen. To maintain a footprint in the 3 jurisdictions under which we operate, we have 3 project managers. Whilst they may not only manage projects in their jurisdiction, it's certainly their role to be the face and ears of the organisation in their region. So on top there, we've got Kristen Nunn who's our Northern Territory manager, and some of you might have known her previously as our Queensland manager. Lindy Swain, who's fairly new to the organisation, who operates out of Broome, representing our Western Australian people, and Ian Biggs, our Queensland manager, who's newly recruited this week actually from the Northern Territory. So welcome Ian. Our research focus for the CRC is around de-risking Northern Australian investment priorities. So everything we do, the type of research we do, whether it be around sector development, policy and regulatory streamlining, or on-farm R&D, all has an element of trying to remove an impediment from that sector, that industry, that business, to enable productivity improvements, increase their sustainability or competitiveness, and drive economy growth and/or improve the well-being of that region, sector, or business. Our remit, based on the Commonwealth funding agreement that we have, allows us only to invest in agriculture, food and aquaculture, or Northern Australian health service delivery. In recognition of the significant amount of ownership and control of the lands in Northern Australia that the Indigenous people of Australia have, the board has made sure that we have a focus specifically on traditional owner-led development and trying to improve the governance and models that traditional owners can use to develop businesses on their lands. Across the research, we invest in sector and supply chain development, innovation within new and emerging and existing agricultural industries, building capacity within the traditional owner-led business enterprise for new models and new ways of doing business, new models of care for health service delivery, education and training, which is a requirement of all CRCs, so funding development of research capacity within Northern Australia, and also our strategic policy development process, where we try and address some of those major regulatory and structural and strategic issues facing Northern Australian development, where we need to get the key decision makers and leaders of the country in the room to start thinking about how we can do things differently. As the topic of this webinar is about the EOI funding call that we've just announced, it opened on Monday, the 10th of August, and will remain open until the 30th of September. As I mentioned, we put all the questions we receive on the website. So we do have a deadline for questions, which is Wednesday the 23rd, just so we've got time to put it up on the website and everyone has fair and open access to all the information about how the process runs. If you're successful or unsuccessful, you should be aware of that outcome by January. And then from there, those that are successful, we will work closely with to turn their expression of interest into a full-fledged project. All of our applications are managed through an online portal. You must apply through that online portal. You can print the PDF of that web page if you want to have the answers, but ultimately you'll need to type them into that web portal and submit online so that we can make sure that there's a fair and equal record of when that expression of interest was submitted, and that everyone has the same word counts and the same process that they're submitting through. For our funding call, we're for the first time able to go back on the research we've now completed. So we've undertaken a number of sectorial analyses across most of the agricultural sectors and the health sector within Northern Australia. And this has really led to us now being able to target our research questions for the next funding call in line with the recommendations that have come from these reports, which I stress are industry-led reports. So we're now mirroring what the industry needs and is saying they need to help them take their industries to the next level. In addition to those priorities identified in our initial foundational research, we still are looking for new and novel research ideas, as long as they fit within our remit of agriculture, food and health, and their and traditional owner-led development. And they're still working on delivering outcomes for benefiting the development of Northern Australia. So just to summarise some of the priorities for some of the sectors within agriculture, within beef, we're largely looking for projects that focus on assisting that industry increase its productivity and value add to the product within Northern Australia. Within rice, we're looking at projects or looking for projects that help integrate the rice system within a greater farming system, and also projects that look at post-farm gate infrastructure and storage and technology that can assist in that space. Aquaculture is largely, we're looking for, again, areas that can analyse the infrastructure gaps that currently exist for what is a very fast-growing sector, and also research which helps with disease mitigation and management as they develop and grow. Horticulture, we've done research around mangoes, lychees and avocados, so we would like to increase our focus to the other parts of the horticultural sector and make sure we tie a loop around understanding the needs of the whole sector before we focus on further research there. Within forestry, it's about working with traditional owners for models of engagement with them that work to help them develop forestry sectors on their lands, and also developing silvopastoral systems that work with both cattle and forestry to make sure that forestry can be profitable as it develops and grows the trees in the short term. Within our broadacre cropping priorities, we still need to look to validate some of the commercial opportunities that may exist within some of the crops. So some fairly basic research there, but also again, storage and handling, very similar to rice, is something that needs to be looked at, and the infrastructure gaps that exist within that space, and also the technology that's required. So as you can see, some of those are quite specific research questions. But as I mentioned, we are always looking also for new and emerging research that we may not have thought of ourselves. So if you have a bit of a crazy idea, please give one of our project managers a call and fly it up the flagpole, because you never know. It might be exactly what we're thinking about, but didn't know it yet. So I would encourage you to still continue to think outside the box. With respect to our health sector, looking for our health situation analysis has really drawn together for the first time a really good look at what's going on across all three jurisdictions and how they interact together. And now we need to just go to a little bit more level of detail around mapping specific community needs across Northern Australia, and then understanding how those needs actually are being met or not met by the existing service delivery framework that's there. So really starting to get a really granular understanding of what's going on and what could be done differently. And then once we have a better understanding of that, coming up with those ideas about how to improve it and bringing new models to try and meet the community's needs better will be a little bit easier to do. We have a priority which we've had every year, but are yet to sort of see a research proposal in this area around opportunities to actually create an export industry around some of the health service or health techniques that we already have. And so as we are a CRC for creating new export industries and developing Northern Australia, we're always open for ideas and research in that space. And again, as with agriculture, very much open to new ideas, new models of care, specifically in health-seeking behaviours and improving those, as well as looking at mental health and how we can improve mental health in Northern Australia as part of our ongoing call for new ideas and research. When we're looking at models of care, obviously integrated care has come through from our situation analysis as a really important part of delivering better services and more cost-effective services for Northern Australia. So when we're looking at analysing those, we would love to see projects which can do some economic modelling, not only around how much that might save state and federal governments in terms of health investment, but also what that might save the economy in terms of reduction in people who are suffering from an illness as a result of better care, so that we can help influence policymakers in maybe looking at different ways of doing healthcare in Northern Australia from an economic perspective. Finally, within our traditional owner-led business development space, still really just looking for new ideas, new models of creating new developments in agriculture or health service delivery for traditional owners. The dot points listed under there are key sort of takeaways from some of the research we're just finalising with NAILSMA around looking at appropriate models for traditional owner-led development. And it just mirrors the sort of narrative that's come back from that research that says that when looking at this type of research, it should look at risk-adverse implementation strategies that don't necessarily emphasise commercial gain as the main outcome, but look at incremental slow growth and don't necessarily look to go large scale quickly or create very intensive industries. It's sort of a more slowly building approach seems to be more sustainable. It also acknowledges that it's important to consider when looking at a particular opportunity, the people that are involved, what their personal experiences are in terms of employment, and also potential traditional uses of the land previously, because that does tend to often drive their preferences in the future, and not necessarily look at just what would be the best enterprise for that particular block of dirt from an economic perspective or a business perspective. And ultimately looking to identify and test new governance structures around developing those businesses and learn more about what really works long term in a sustainable way for those business opportunities at a commercial level. So to be eligible for one of our collaborations, we need to make sure that there is a collaboration. So it can't just be a researcher, it needs to be a researcher and one industry participant. You know, where possible in health, it's a bit more difficult to define, but we try to identify someone who's going to be an end user of the technology or a proponent of the technology, essentially to ensure that there's someone there that will pick this up and create the impact at the end is what we're looking for. Obviously, as a CRC, we require a one-to-one matched funding model, and as this is a competitive funding round, the more cash, the more competitive you'll be. So we don't. It's not a hard and fast, no cash, no deal, but you would have to have a pretty good proposal to compete against others that have good proposals and cash. So please talk to your project managers about that if you are building a collaboration, because they can help you with a bit more detailed advice there. Obviously, it must fit within agriculture and food or health or northern health service delivery. Even if it's a traditional owner-led business project, it still has to be only in agriculture and food or health service delivery. They're the only areas we're allowed to fund. And of course, I mentioned at the beginning, please make sure your research falls within Northern Australian impact area. So as I mentioned, we have a online portal to complete your expression of interest. I'd encourage you all to go online and look at the information there. There's a screenshot of our website. All of the expression of interest guidelines exist on our webpage. Everything you need to know is in those guidelines. All the questions that we normally get asked have been put in there because we've been asked them before, but if you have any further questions that you can't find the information in there, please call us or send us an email at projects@crcna.com.au, and we'll try and get back to you as quickly as we can or have someone call you. Don't leave your submission to the last minute. I can't stress this enough. The form looks simple enough, but when you get into it, you might run into a few problems or need to go and find out some more information from one of your partners. So we can't take some late submissions. So please get online a few days early to start filling it out, and don't leave it to the last minute. It has cost a few people their opportunity in the past. You don't need to be a member of the CRC to submit an EOI. We can talk about whether, we like people if they're successful to become members, but it's not necessary. It's just something that we like because we do need members to maintain the company. As I said, read the expression of interest guidelines. You've got the project managers there to help you. They're there to guide you, to give you advice, to tell you what's worked in the past and what hasn't. So use them. They're very knowledgeable in how we operate. So and there's the email address. And as I mentioned, frequently asked questions are published on the website. So keep going back there if you're interested in learning more. So that's all I really wanted to cover. I think we've got through that fairly quickly. So I see there's a couple of questions come through. Carla, did you want to just read those for me, or I'll try and answer them? Got 3 questions there.
I'll be the voice from behind.
Yep.
So the first question is sort of just asking you to elaborate on one of our research priorities, the research projects which support the adoption of existing R&D that provide significant improvements in productivity and profitability across multiple enterprises. Can you expand on the intent of multiple enterprises? I believe that's one of our big ones.
I think that came from Lee. G'day, Lee. How you going, mate? That's obviously out the back of the beef situation analysis. There's a large amount, as you'd appreciate, of R&D available to beef producers because of the great work MLA has already done. So, to try and create as much impact as we can, we really want to focus on if we are going to do a project which is I guess extending that existing R&D out to existing producers, that impact is spread across as much of the industry as we can and creating as bigger impact as possible. So, if it's an extension event that's really only applicable to one property, it would be less attractive to us than if it was available to multiple producers and accessed by a large proportion of the sector. Hopefully that's responded to that one, Lee.
Do lead proponents need to be businesses incorporated in Australia, for example, who have an ABN?
You must have at least one organisation that has an ABN, but not all of them need to be. Ideally, the lead proponent would be a company in Australia, just to enable us to make contracting a lot simpler. So, if there's a specific situation where that's not possible, I'd be happy to at least have a conversation about how we might be able to make that work for the right project.
Does an entity like DAF, which does industry relevant research, need to have an industry partner to be considered for a project?
Yes, it does. Ideally, the idea of having the industry partners is to demonstrate that there are producers out there that are going to pick that research up and implement it on farm. So it gives us that guaranteed pathway to impact. It is also a requirement of the CRC to have the industry partners as part of the projects.
What topics will be covered in the next 2 webinars?
I think the next 2 webinars are the same content, just giving people who weren't available today the opportunity to hear me again, unfortunately.
But if there is, if people have feedback that they would like us to follow up on a certain element, we could certainly have a look at how we can schedule something around that as well. Yeah,
if there's people that want to talk about a specific issue or really get into the detail, please just contact us directly, and we'll set up a time to sit down and talk to you, or have a Zoom meeting or whatever's appropriate.
The next question, can we start working with the project managers at the development of the EOI?
Absolutely, yep. I'd encourage you to engage with them early. Those people that really work closely with our project managers tend to be more successful as a general rule, because their projects have have been shaped to be more closely aligned with what we're looking for.
Jed, can you please explain a bit more on cash and in-kind contributions?
So if a project is coming to us saying that this research will cost $200,000, it would be our expectation that we would invest $100,000 and that the other $100,000 would be invested by the participants that are coming to us, and that $100,000 would be made up partly in cash, which has to be given to the CRC before it's invested back into the project, and in-kind contributions, which is essentially people's operating costs and time that they're putting in to the project. And we have some guidelines in our EOI guidelines around how to account for those in-kind contributions. But we can talk you through that in a little bit more detail if you'd like to contact us.
On average, how many EOIs are submitted, and what is the percentage of successful calls?
So in the first year, we had 130 expressions of interest. Second year, 75, I think, and last year it was in the 50s, I think. So slowly the number are coming down. I think last year the number came down predominantly because we held some of these webinars and people sort of got a feel for whether they should apply or not prior to submitting, and didn't submit, so which was good. Generally, we have funded about 10 projects each call as a general rule. Some of our projects have requested only small amounts of money, under 100,000. Other projects which we've funded have been up to $1 million. There's no limit or minimum that you can ask for. However, if you look at our organisation, we've been provided $75 million by the Commonwealth to invest in research over 10 years. So, you know, break that down over 10 years, it's roughly $7.5 million a year. And then you've got to take a bit of operating costs out of that, and then whatever co-contributions we get come in as well. So it gives you a feel for the amount of money we have to invest every year.
Are there any project length of time? So I think the question is asking, is there a maximum length of projects and maximum dollar constraints or preferences around those projects?
3-year projects are ideally where we're at. We're happy to consider projects that need to go longer, but we'd like to, in the past, we've sort of said, show us what you can get done in 3 years, and then we can start a discussion about continuing further with you know, additional research. Shorter projects are fine, 1 to 2 years. In terms of the quantum, I think I sort of already addressed that, but there's no minimum or maximum, but you know, up until now, our biggest investment has been around $1 million.
And we had a follow-up, we had a similar question along those lines around the size of the project submissions, too large or too small, but you basically said, Jed, that we're happy to sort of look at anything,
yep,
as long as it meets our guidelines, and we can sort of work with the teams around the development of that.
Yep.
We have a question here about our NALSMA report, Jed, the business on country, the diversification report that NALSMA are working on, and
yep,
whether or not it's likely to be available before the close of the EOI round.
We are very much hoping so. Kristen, are you able to provide me with the most recent information on how close that is to being submitted to us?
I wouldn't have a concrete answer, but I think we would be able to push something out, I think.
Yeah.
Because Ricky and Alan were quite confident. They just needed to sort of run it by a couple of people before publishing. So I think it's quite close, yeah.
Okay, great.
The next question, to what extent can funding be in kind and considered as part of the dollar for dollar contribution eligibility?
So as sort of previously indicated, in kind is part of the part of the one-to-one contribution. To give you a bit of a feel, as a general rule, we'd love to see about 25% of what you're contributing as cash and then the rest in kind. Like I said, some sectors and some projects may go a little bit under. We prefer they don't. It's competitive, so if you do, it puts your opportunities at doubt. But that's a general rule that we operate on.
A question around matching funding. So can we use NHMRC or ARC funding to match your funding or our funding offers? And do we still need to have an industry partner if can traditional owners be considered industry partners? So
yep.
Can we use other funding from ARCs to match our funding, and are traditional owners considered industry partners?
Absolutely, I would consider TOs to be the industry partners of any collaboration. When it comes to matching funds, we can match anything except Commonwealth funds. So I think ARC is Commonwealth funds, is it not? Off the top of my head, I'm not 100%.
Yeah, they both are.
Yeah, I thought so. So unfortunately, it doesn't stop you from adding that to the project as a contribution. We just can't report that as matched funds. We would have to show that as just a project contribution that's part funding that project along with us. So it wouldn't be able to come into that one-to-one, unfortunately.
I think we've answered this one before, but we'll just reiterate, what time period for the project is preferred by the CRCNA?
Yeah, ideally a 3-year project is the extent that we'd like to make a commitment for at this stage.
A question around, I guess, some of those industry sort of sectoral analyses. At times, research is led by researchers and applications get developed with peripheral industry support. As an industry association, this is from Joanne Rusco, Barramundi Farmers Association, we would like assurance that EOIs purporting to benefit our sector will be truth tested against industry priorities and with key industry representatives. So in this instance, this is an aquaculture proponent asking for assurances that our EOIs purporting to benefit the aquaculture sector will be truth tested against industry priorities and with key industry representatives.
Yeah, it's a good point that's being made there. We do have an advisory committee made up of key people from jurisdictions, agricultural departments, that we also use to truth test all of our agricultural projects and make recommendations to us around which ones have the most validity. But absolutely, if we get a Barramundi one in, we can I can make that commitment to contact the Barramundi Association and make sure that it's meeting a priority of their sector.
And certainly do elaborate on that, Jen. The aquaculture research priorities have come from the aquaculture situational analysis, which the Barramundi Association was proponent or participant in. So that's where we've sort of disseminated that information from that report.
Well said.
Can participant contributions be in kind alone, so no cash contributions?
Look, they can, and we have done projects that only provide in kind, but it's not our preferred model. Cash does definitely demonstrate that proponents have skin in the game and are really going to make the project work. However, we do recognise that some industries and sectors maybe find it more difficult to identify sources of cash. But it'd want to be a really good, strong project to get over the line against others that bring cash to the table, because, as I said, keep reminding people it is a competitive round.
What period does our funding apply to, and when does it start if successful? So this question is actually referred to our funding as a grant, so it's probably a good opportunity to sort of clarify around that as well, Jen.
Yeah, so we are a cooperative research centre, and we consider ourselves as co-investors in the research and take a very close interest in how the research is progressing work with the researchers if things go off track to try and bring them back or to pivot the research to where it needs to go. So certainly don't look at us as a grant giving organisation, look at us as a co-investor in your research. Obviously, in terms of the period, it starts as soon as we can get agreement on what the contract or the project looks like, get it contracted and kick it off. So often with more complicated projects, that can be almost 12 months after the EOI has been submitted. If it takes that long to get it to where it needs to be for us to be comfortable to sign the contract.
A health question, what percentage of health research projects get funded?
There's, I don't know what a percentage would be, but most of the research projects proposals that have come to us up to date have been not necessarily directly related to health service delivery, and so we've not invested in them for that purpose. That there's other research organisations there to invest in the type of research that we've been getting. So we are looking for more research in that space. We're a bit light on. It's really what comes and what's best focused on what we're trying to achieve. There's no percentage either way.
Can you match funds that come from international partners?
Yes, we can. As long as it's not Commonwealth money, we can match it.
And a question around IP, Jed. Will the CRC&A be the owner of any IP created in the project?
This CRC is less interested in IP than most. Our starting point for all our contracts is that the IP is available as Creative Commons to everybody, and then if there's specific IP that either people bring to the party that they'd like to protect, or they would like access to as part of the research collaboration, and that just becomes a negotiation about that IP. We're not trying to create a legacy IP situation at the CRC. We're about making the research available to Northern Australia to de-risk the Northern Australian environment and make sure that people either increase the GDP of Northern Australia, create more jobs out of the research, attract more investment, or create more efficient supply chains out of the research we're doing.
That's all of the questions that have come through for now, Jen.
Yep.
If there's anyone else got any other questions or we haven't answered anything fully, or if they'd like to sort of rehash anything, now would be a good opportunity to do that.
Any of our project managers want to make any comments?
No, I'm good, thanks.
Good. I think Ian Biggs listening in, but might not have his mic on. So thank you very much, everyone, for your time. I hope that was informative and useful. But if nothing else, it puts some faces to some names and gives you some contact details so that you can further investigate your research proposals and hopefully we can write some contracts and do some business with you in the future. We're looking forward to seeing the round come through. Thank you very much, everybody.